Hello and welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Valentyn joining me now to discuss investigation into the murder of Euromaidan protesters in February of 2014 is a former chief of Ukraine's security service, Mr. Valentyn Nalyvaichenko. Mr. Nalyvaichenko, welcome to Viewpoint.
Thank you.
Mr. Nalyvaichenko, several weeks ago you claimed that you have evidence of Russian involvement into the murder of protesters on the Euromaidan in central Kyiv in February of 2014. What kind of evidence do you have and what kind of involvement we're talking here about?
Actually, this is the second time I've publicly stated that Ukrainian law enforcement bodies and investigative teams, after the Revolution of Dignity, immediately we got hard evidences since April 2014, which clearly showed that in 2013, in the beginning of 2014, Russian involvement, especially of FSB generals and officers, one point. The second point is the involvement of Russian officials arriving to Kyiv, exactly the same dates, meeting Yanukovych and his officials in the presidential administration and in the government, former Prime Minister Azarov, and other officials, law enforcement, and ex-SBU head, Mr. Yakimenko, preparing and getting ready, setting up scenario of Nova Russia, which is now well known because of separatist movements and the criminal gangs at the east of Ukraine. But same time, in this scenario, preparing the anti-Maidan, anti-Revolution of Dignity measures, including illegal involvement of law enforcement, Ukrainian law enforcement, Ukrainian special services, and participation of Russian officers, representatives of law enforcement bodies from Russia, and special services, such like FSB. We have provided from the very beginning.
What are we talking here about? Are we talking about the fact that these guys, they came to Ukraine, they were meeting with the presidential administration, or are we talking about the evidence which suggests that they were there on Maidan and shooting at the protesters?
Investigation clearly gathered reliable facts and hard evidences not only of arrival and departure of 3 groups of such FSB generals and officers, but also of their involvement in training, in preparing, in organizing, and direct participation in all and each and every measures which were elaborated by Yanukovych regime and his allies in law enforcement bodies and in special services of Ukraine, including former SBU. That is the most dangerous part. Even including...
So basically they were training these special ops which were trying to crack the protesters.
Many evidences, many witnesses which were from the very beginning of the investigation. Again, I reiterate, we have studied since March 2014. And hundreds and hundreds of evidence were gathered together and provided to the General Prosecutor's office under their, let's say, leading investigative team.
When did you start providing the prosecutor's office with this evidence?
First letter signed by me to the first General Prosecutor after the Revolution of Dignity, I've signed on the 7th of April 2014. So last year, April. That was the first letter where we have first time, investigators gathered information on first FSB group officers. They actually were from time to time without no reaction, but it was our obligation to continue the investigation as counterintelligence power is under the SBU authority. We have continued. We did not actually have to get any guidance or whatever other command or order, guys, you have to investigate. We simply investigated because we, new team of SBU after the Revolution of Dignity, were devoted, really devoted and committed to investigating each and every piece of the mass shooting and crimes against humanity which are really happened here in Ukraine and Kyiv and other cities. So my clear statement again is include all those evidences already gathered or gathered just this time, last days, then to finalize with the procedural things, and as soon as possible to add and to include all hard evidences gathered, including a role of Russian FSB, Russian officials from presidential administration of Russia, and pass them to the court, Ukrainian court. And what is the most important, as soon as possible to get this trial and to make it public. Public for media, public for lawyers. I know that they are doing a great job.
Mr. Nalyvaichenko, do you know what has happened to this evidence? Because there is a trial happening right now, a big trial where 2 Ukrainian special ops officers are being accused of killing at least 39 protesters on Euromaidan. So is the evidence which your service collected is part of the evidence in this case? I
believe so. At least my last appearance to the General Prosecutor's office, I demanded, I provided again, once again, with the letters and materials I've already signed on the position of head of the SBU. And what is more important, Volodymyr, and for our audience to know, that from the very first months last year, we have detained and the Ukrainian court arrested key generals from the SBU, previous SBU staff. General Big is under the arrest, and he is the key witness. What was planning, what they did. I mean, the previous, let's say, SBU.
Why he's not on trial to this point?
That is why I'm actually from the first month's demand, and my position is the same: as soon as possible, to bring those responsible to justice.
Okay, you must have some insight on why he's not still on trial. What is happening? He
still is being questioned by the military prosecutors.
So the investigation is dragging for such a long time.
You or me, we cannot say, okay, guys, that's enough. This is their decision. But me and lawyers, we do encourage the investigators from the General Prosecutor's office not to delay, not to let the whatever case again to be without trial, but as soon as possible, at least against those who are detained and arrested. And General Big is not the only one. Another one official is the former head of Kyiv Field Office SBU, Mr. Shchogolev. He is detained and arrested as well. So I think this is very important to, as soon as possible, pass materials and key witnesses or main suspects to the court.
Mr. Nalyvaichenko, again going back to this court trial of 2 special ops officers, we've been talking to the lawyers of the victims' families, and they said that you actually helped them a lot. You shared a lot of documents, a lot of evidence with them. So what kind of evidence did you provide to the lawyers, and what is your role in this trial?
That's true. I do think that lawyers, and they are now, let's say, united in one lawyers group, very powerful, they are young people, very smart, and they helped. We, as a state, as a new government, we have to recognize their outstanding role in the organizing of the real investigation of those crimes against humanity and mass murdering of protesters at Maidan. But now they are, I mean lawyers, are fully provided with the possible information, and my role was to open all archives, all materials, and declassify, and to let lawyers get what they need to defend those families of the victims.
What particular evidence we're talking about? What particular documents?
This is up to them to name that, but what I can mention that the real involvement of SBU former officials and Russian officials.
Understood. Mr. Nalyvaichenko, you were appointed as Chief of Security Service of Ukraine just 2 days after the end of the Euromaidan Revolution. There was huge request from the public, from the Ukrainians, to detain the perpetrators of these horrendous crimes which took place on Maidan immediately, and put them on trial. Yep. But only now, only like this year, which is more than a year after the end of the Euromaidan Revolution, the accused are on trial. Why did it take so long from detaining them, from identifying the people, to putting them on trial?
I mentioned to you, Volodymyr, those 2 ex-officials whom we have detained and arrested, and they're in custody. That's important. But you're absolutely right. I was appointed by the parliament as a head of SBU on 24th of February. But 21st and 22nd of February, those Yanukovych and his close allies, they fled to Russia or to Sevastopol, already occupied by Russian special forces. So they left in the country 2 or 3 days before real Ukrainian parliament took the power and authority over the territory of Ukraine. So real dates of their escape 2 or 3 days earlier than even us were, let's say, were
But obviously
in the
these
offices.
are senior officials. What about the regular guys? What about the special ops which were on Maidan shooting? Why are there only 2 people currently on trial?
No, that's about other people, not the leadership. I can tell you that in April last year, together with Mr. Abakov, we have organized and conduct special operation. We have detained 12, I think, Berkut special forces officers and delivered them, actually brought them to the investigators. It was special operation and everybody were detained. It was this decision of the prosecutors whom to let go and whom to arrest. For unknown for me reasons happened what happened. Only 2 or 4 of them still are now in custody. Plus, what is important, from the former SBU staff, all and each and everybody from the former Alpha Special Forces of Yakimenko, Savinkovich SBU appeared to the investigators. No one left the country. I mean the SBU responsibility.
So, well, thank you very much for your valuable input. It was really interesting and exciting to hear all these details firsthand from you, Mr. Valentyn Nalyvaichenko, former chief of Ukraine Security Service. This has been Volodymyr Sulu for Viewpoint, discussing the case of investigation of the murders of Euromaidan protesters in Kyiv in February of 2014 with Chief of Ukraine Security Service, Mr. Valentyn Nalyvaichenko. Thank you for watching Viewpoint.